Chapter 3, Teardrop Island. Samantha and the twins set out early the next day. Their packed baskets were jammed with sandwiches and cookies, butterfly nets, bird guides, and magnifying glasses, the same equipment they started out with every morning. But this morning, Samantha had her mother's sketchbook tucked away under the picnic blanket in her pack basket. The Admiral came down to the dock to help the girls push off. "Where are you off to today, mateys?" he asked. "Just exploring," answered Agnes lightly. "Well, keep an eye on the weather," warned the Admiral. "It could turn nasty. That storm could twist around and hit us again today. Anchors away. Cheerio." "Cheerio," the girls called back as their canoe glided into the deeper water. It was another hot day. The sun burned so strong it seemed to bleach the sky white. "As soon as we get to the island, I'm going straight to the waterfall," announced Agnes. "It looks so cool in the pictures." "I'm climbing right up to that rocky cliff at the end of the island," said Agatha. I can't wait to see the view. "I want to see everything," said Samantha. She wondered what Teardrop Island would be like. Would it be just like the way it was in her mother's pictures? Would she remember being there with her parents? Would it seem friendly and familiar, or scary and strange? The lake was flat and peaceful. They paddled steadily, and soon Piney Point was out of sight. "Watch it! Rocks ahead!" warned Agatha from the front of the canoe. The lake was suddenly narrow. Steep hills rose up on either side. Big boulders stuck up out of the water. Jagged rocks hid just below the surface. The water churned white where it splashed against the rocks. The girls were quiet. They gripped their paddles and steered carefully. They had to zig and zag to find the best path around the sharp rocks. "Go to the left," Agatha would shout. Then, "Quick, to the right!" Samantha felt sweat from heat and fear dripping down her back. But the canoe was high in the water, so it slipped smoothly over the rocks beneath it, and it was so slender it slid between the boulders as easily as a fish. Finally, they were through the narrow passage and into a wider, deeper part of the lake. "Phew," said Samantha. "We did it!" cheered Agatha, waving her paddle over her head. "I bet even the Admiral couldn't have done better," boasted Agnes. Now the canoe seemed to float by itself across the water into the cool shadow of Teardrop Island. As they came near the island, the girls could hear a chorus of birds singing gaily, as if the island itself were welcoming them. They saw a small stretch of pebbly shore where they could land the canoe. The rest of the shore was made up of big rocks. As soon as the water was shallow enough, Agatha hopped out of the canoe and pulled the front end out of the water and up onto the pebbly shore. Samantha and Agnes quickly gathered up their packed baskets and climbed out too. They were so excited they rushed up the steep shore into the piney woods. "We're here!" crowed Agnes. They threaded their way between the tall pine trees and moss-covered rocks. There seemed to be an old path, but it was so overgrown with giant ferns and long grass it was hard to tell. Overhead, leaves fluttered hello and squirrels leapt from tree to tree, inspecting their visitors. "It's like a jungle," exclaimed Agatha as she batted a branch away. "Now we're really explorers." It looks like the enchanted forest of Sleeping Beauty," said Samantha, as if it's been under a spell for 100 years, just waiting for us to come. The branches of the trees hung so low over the path, it was like walking through a green tunnel. But once in a while, the girls would come into an open space between the trees where a surprise batch of wildflowers grew. "I hear the waterfall!" cried Samantha. She ran ahead of the others to a sunny clearing, and there it was, looking just exactly the way it did in her mother's painting. A lacy curtain of water splashing down giant steps of stones. The water spray caught the sun and made little rainbows. Samantha's heart thudded. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Without a word, the three girls pulled off their shoes and stockings. They bunched up their skirts and waded into the shallow pool at the foot of the waterfall. They got as close to the fall as they could and let the spray mist their faces. The water was icy cold. It felt wonderful after their hot canoe ride. Next time we come, we'll have to bring our bathing suits," said Agnes. Samantha grinned. "I don't mind getting wet," she said. She pulled off her midi blouse and skirt and walked straight into the waterfall in her chemise and drawers. Agatha was right behind her. And there it was, looking just exactly the way it did in her mother's painting. Ooh! They shrieked with glee as the water showered them. Come on in, Agnes, it's freezing. Agnes took off her blouse and skirt, folded them carefully, and began to walk slowly into the pool. Then, oops! She slipped on a mossy stone and fell plunk on her bottom. Samantha and Agatha laughed as they helped her stand up. That's a fast way to get wet, Samantha giggled. She let the water pour down on her head and neck and shoulders until she couldn't stand the cold any longer. Then she ran out into the sunshine, then back into the falls again. After a while, the girls were cold down to their bones, so they stretched out on a warm rock to dry off. Samantha lay on her stomach and put her face into the water for a drink. Oh, she sputtered, it's so cold it makes my nose numb. Agnes nodded. My skin is all tingly, she said, and I'm hungry. Let's have a picnic. They spread the picnic blanket on the rock and sat cross-legged, holding their big sandwiches in both hands. This is the nicest place I've ever been in my whole life, said Agatha. It's so peaceful, said Agnes. All you can hear are water, birds, and the breeze. Now that you've seen the waterfall, do you remember coming here with your mother and father? Agatha asked Samantha. Samantha kicked one leg in the water, sending sparkling drops into the air. I think so, she said slowly. I feel as if I've been here before, but it's all mixed up. It's almost like dreaming. Well, it's a dreamy place, said Agnes. She tilted her face up to the sun. Water drops hung in her hair like pearls. I'm very glad your mother drew those pictures, said Agatha. Otherwise, we'd never have come here. Samantha looked around. It gave her goosebumps to think that she was in a place she had been with her mother and father, and nothing had changed. This very same rock and those very same trees were all in the pictures her mother had painted. Come on, said Samantha. She stood up and brushed the crumbs off her lap. Let's get dressed and explore. I want to find all the places my mother drew. She took her mother's sketchbook out of her packed basket. All right, agreed the twins. The sketchbook was like a treasure map. It led the girls on a long, happy hunt. First, they found the grassy field where Samantha and her parents used to have picnics. It was just as sunny as it looked in the picture Samantha's mother had painted. Family picnic summer 1897. The girls looked a long time before they found the big split rock that was in another picture. They found flowers growing in the shade of graceful white birch trees. The same flowers were in the picture that showed Samantha and her father picking a bouquet. Picking flowers with father. And finally, the girls climbed up to the highest point of the island so they could see the view. The dark green pines and the hills that sloped down to the wide lake looked the same as they did in the picture Samantha's mother had painted. Gosh, you can touch the clouds up here, said Agatha. Look, there's the gooseneck, said Agnes. She pointed to the narrow, rocky part of the lake they had paddled through that morning. And there's Piney Point, said Samantha. It looks very small from here. The girls were so high up they seemed to be standing where the sky met the land. The wind tugged at Samantha's skirt as if it wanted to lift her up like a kite into the clouds. Samantha looked at the sky. The clouds were dark and heavy. I think we better go, she said to the twins. I think it looks like it might rain. Agatha squinted up at the clouds. You're right, she said with a sigh, but I hate to leave. We can come back, said Agnes. Oh, yes, agreed Samantha. We can always come back anytime we want to. They hiked back to the waterfall, gathered up their belongings, and put their packed baskets on their backs. Samantha felt tired but content as they walked down the narrow path to the lake shore. What a glorious day! She remembered it forever and ever. She was very glad they had come. As the girls came to the edge of the water, the leaves of the silver maples were showing their shiny undersides. There was always a sign that a storm was coming. Is this where we left the canoe? Asked Agatha. I think so, said Samantha. Well, I don't see it, said Agatha. Uh-oh, said Agnes. The girls stood in a row on the pebbly shore. Didn't you tie it up? Agatha asked Agnes. No, Agnes wailed. I thought you did. Well, said Samantha calmly, it's probably just drifted off a little bit. Let's walk around the shore and see if it's washed up somewhere else. It was very hard to walk around the shore of the island. The girls had to climb up and down big, jagged rocks that were slippery from the lake spray. Soon all three girls were wet and out of breath. The canoe was nowhere in sight. I'm cold, complained Agnes. What will we do now? Swim home? Agatha suggested desperately. Samantha wished she could laugh, but Agatha's silly ideas didn't seem very funny now. We have to use our heads, she said. Let's go back out to the rocky cliff. We can see all around the island from up there. We're sure to spot the canoe. Wearily, they trudged up the same hill that they scampered just a few hours earlier. They followed the path past the waterfall and up to the rocky cliff. By now, the sky was the color of tarnished silver and the wind was strong. Samantha held her wet hair in one hand to keep it from blowing in her face. She looked all around, but there was no canoe to be seen. No canoe at all. Samantha's stomach flopped with fear. We're stranded, moaned Agatha. How will we ever get back to Piney Point? Someone will come and get us, said Samantha. But how will they know we're here? Asked Agnes. Who could sense smoke signals, said Agatha. But we don't have matches. How can we start a fire? Asked Samantha. You rub two sticks together, I think, said Agatha uncertainly. Or you can make paper catch fire with a magnifying glass. I read that in a book. She paused through her packed basket and dragged out her magnifying glass. It won't work. The sun's got to be shining, Samantha said, and the sun certainly was not shining at the moment. Big black clouds crowded next to each other, blocking the sun completely. Maybe if we make lots of noise, someone would hear us, said Agnes. So Samantha blew on her bosun's whistle as hard as she could. Agnes and Agatha shouted, "Help! Help! Somebody help!" But the wind was blowing so hard they knew no one could hear them. They gave up and looked longingly toward home. Jeepers, I'm hungry, said Agatha. It must be dinner time by now. Well, at least when we're not home for dinner, they'll realize something is wrong, said Agnes. In fact, they probably started looking for us when we weren't back to swim with the Admiral. Samantha hoped Agnes was right. She sat down next to a big rock to get shelter from the wind. It was getting colder and colder. All three girls wrapped up together in the picnic blanket, but it didn't help much. It felt as if they sat there for hours, watching the sky get darker and darker. A chilling drizzle began to fall. We may have to sleep here tonight, said Agatha, hugging her knees to her chest. Agnes shuddered. I hope there are no wild animals to creep up on us. Samantha started to say, No, I don't think... when they heard a rustling sound below them on the path. What's that? Agatha cried. Shh, hissed Agnes. The girls heard more rustling. It might have been the wind, but it sounded more like a bear or a wolf pushing through the trees, coming closer and closer. Then they heard a moan. Samantha gasped. Eek! Yelled Agnes. She clutched Samantha's arm. The girls held their breath and listened. The sounds came closer. Another moan, more rustling, then a crash. Samantha grabbed a big stick and stood up. Get behind me, she whispered to Agnes and Agatha. They heard the moan once more, and then a low voice struggling to be heard over the wind. Help! Help me! Samantha lowered the stick. Who's there? She called. Help! The voice called again. Oh, Samantha, help! The girls looked at each other, then started toward the voice, stumbling over one another as... they headed down the hill. There, lying across the muddy path, was the Admiral. Admiral! Cried Samantha. She hurried toward him and knelt by his side. What happened? The Admiral's voice was weak. My head, he gasped. I fell and hit on the rocks. He put his hand up to his eye. In the darkness and rain, Samantha could just barely see the deep gash on his forehead and the blood that was trickling from it. The Admiral's eyelids drooped and he moaned again. I came to help you, he whispered, but now you'll have to help me. He tried to go on, but his voice failed, his eyes closed, and his head dropped onto the ground.